Assalamu alaikum, ya Ali Madad, Mumini Mamnat. This is your host, Syed Jamil Ahsan, bringing you the next episode of discussions with Dr. Naweed Syed. And for the namesake, we have Dr. Naweed Syed with us, great scholar, scientist, and of course, a very well-known person in the religious circles of not only Canada, but also in Pakistan. So welcome you, Dr. Saab. We also have our other participants, Sukaina Jamil and Farwa Jafri. Thank you so much for Farwa and Sukaina and Dr. Saab to participate in today's program. Just a brief overview of what we have discussed so far in this series of programs. As you all know, this program is a part of QAIM TV's theme of Maktab Ahlebait Vision 2050. The vision basically talks about what is going to be happening in 2050, where we would want to be in 2050, and what would we need to do in 2050. And in that context, this program talks about, primarily deals about issues that face our youth. And we've started the programming, we've discussed in detail about education and how to approach that in a better way and get the most out of it. We've started a discussion in the last program about job search. We will continue that discussion. Without waiting further ado, I'll ask Sukaina to start with her question so that we can have as much questions from the participants as possible.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
So in the last program, I asked a bit about advice for new grads who kind of feel like they've settled for a job that's kind of not utilizing their skills as well, or not allowing them to work to the best of their potential. And Dr. Saab gave great feedback on rising through the ranks and improving yourself through what you've learned, and if you have the space for it, to pursue higher studies, and if not, to work hard and rise through the ranks. So that kind of goes into the next question that I had, which was, at what point after starting a new job would you say is an appropriate amount of time to start searching either for a next opportunity or to grow within that same company? And if someone feels like they're not able to kind of reach their full potential in their current place of work, when and how would you suggest to kind of move forward?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to both of you, and also Jamil Bhai for really anchoring this program. I think you have really done a phenomenal job for community. And as you know, the Naweed Bhai had initiated this particular initiative that, how can we prepare our youth for 2050, right? So in other words, how can we prepare our youth for the arrival of our Imam alayhi salam? So I think that's it, that it is what it is that he would be needing from us to be able to really, hasten his arrival on this planet, and then make it really blessed with peace, happiness, and prosperity for all. So I think that's really something and an important area. So you've really asked, and both of you, mashallah, asked really phenomenal questions, very pertinent, very pointy, and very relevant to the topic as well. So you asked, when should one start really thinking about the other job? I think never. You do at that job, work at that job as if you are going to do nothing else. This is it. This is what I am going to do, and I see myself doing for the rest of my life. If you are half-hearted, you will not learn from that job or the job skill sets, and you will be miserable every day waking up and doing it. So, imagine yourself without the job that you have. God forbid, if there's a financial issue, God forbid, you got to pay the student loan, you can't, or there are other liabilities or responsibility. Imagine yourself without that job, right? So most important thing is that if you do get that job, I would say that stick to it as if this is the job that you're going to do for the rest of your life. This will empower you to learn as much as you can and to the best of your ability. Otherwise, you will be always half-hearted. You know, you're driving straight, but you're looking in the rear view mirror. And you know what is going to actually happen in that case. You're going to have a crash. So when you will leave this, you would not have put your heart into it. And as a result, you know, the consequences will be that it is complete waste of time. And I give you my personal example. When I finished my PhD, a supervisor, professor came and he says, do you want to come and work with us as a postdoc? And I said, where? He said, Calgary. I said, where is that place? He said, you know, this year Winter Olympics were held in Calgary. So I said to myself, you know, a place where Winter Olympics could be held can't be, you know, Changamanga or Kathmandu or Maldives can't. That, you know, Jamil Bhai would know what these places look like. So, you know, it can't be that bad. So I said, you know, no harm in trying. So I came here end of, you know, September, October, and it was brutally cold, -50 with, you know, wind blowing like anything. And then I also realized that the salary my professor really offered me wasn't really sufficient. So he said, oh, in Canada, you will be fine. And, you know, when you're looking for a job, you just go for whatever they tell you. When I came here and, you know, my take home was $1,400. And after I paid $600, you know, for my rent and then my bills, my car loan, I had only $200 left to live on. And, you know, when our son got out of his diapers, he was, you know, 8 months when we came here, we had a big celebration because that saved me $40, right? So the important thing at that time was that I said, oh my God, you know, I can't really survive on this. So I went to see my supervisor. I said, you know, I'm putting in $200 every month on my credit card just to get by. But since I am here, I promise that I will do the work. I am going to work as hard as I can. So what I did was I sent my wife and our son to her parents, and then I almost slept 3 months in the lab. The security guard will come and have coffee in the middle of the night. I gave it all I had. I had a science paper, I had a neuron paper with cover, you know, and it was the first time university, anybody has published the science paper. So my picture was actually every newspaper, every tram and the bus would have my picture. I couldn't go anywhere. So I went back to my supervisor and I said to him, you know, I promised that this is what I would do. I have done my due diligence because the risk that I earned, I needed to make sure this is halal. Okay, so, you know, there are days even now when I go and I goof around, I don't do anything. When I come home, actually, I don't eat my dinner. I just have a glass of water and I go to bed because I don't consider that food to be kosher, right? It's not halal because I didn't put the effort to earn it. So, you know, the important thing to really take away is that do that job as you are not looking for anything else. This is the only job you're going to have. And this is where you are going to put 100%. Because if your heart is not there, the earning that you have, if you're not really serving the cause and the, you know, the job task and your profile, that risk is haram. And our Masumin have also told us that risk is haram, and it will each and every single protein molecule, you know, amino acid that you purchase and eat with that food becomes part of you. For as long as that is in your body, their namaz is not accepted. So it's really important that we put in 100% that we have for every job. And yes, you can continue to look for opportunities, you know, as they come along, but imagining that this is the job that you are working with, because your heart is in it, your mind is in it, you will learn best, you will get the best experience, you will increase the circle of influence, you will make, you know, people around you will say that, you know, what a trustworthy, absolutely, impeccable personal, interpersonal skills. What a person to work with. And I think when you leave that legacy behind, you have actually created a legacy which you thought was a futile and a trivial job. I'll give you an example. I was working in my office late, and the cleaning lady came up at around 8 o'clock, and she quietly knocked on my door. She came and she picked up the garbage and she left. She was leaving. I said, hold it. Don't you finish at 5:30 or 6? She said, Dr. Syed, I do. But I took my bus to go to Northeast, and I got off the bus. I realized that I collected the garbage from every office except you. And since you've been so good, so kind, I had to come back and pick your garbage. I sat there with her and I said to her, look, I tell you what, I will let you take this garbage on one condition, that you would allow me to drop you home. So I actually took her in my car, dropped her home. And every year, whenever my staff got a new fleece or a Christmas gift, she got the same gift. So the sense of ownership and sense of belonging to an organization, just remember, nobody washes a rental car, right? Nobody does. We never wash a rental car, polish it and then return it. We just take it and, dump it, drop the keys and then, sign and we leave. So if you are not really in the job with your heart and mind, you will have no sense of ownership. When you have no ownership, you will treat it as a rental car. And as a result, people will be resentful to you. You will not get a reference letter from them. And when you go home, you will not be satisfied that you did not earn your livelihood through halal means. I didn't mean to scare you, but this is really the philosophy that I have always really followed myself, that, to earn rizq halal is the most important thing, is that you got to put the effort in honestly with full heart and soul. That's what I would suggest, that do it as if you do nothing else, and that you are not looking for any jobs at that moment when you come, and also don't take those, issues and then, the family yapping. My dad always used to say, "Tumhare paas achhi job na ho, to BV bhi izzat nahi karegi," right? Your own wife won't respect you if you don't have a good job. So he never told me what the good job was really. So when I leave home, there is a garbage bin outside. I actually dump my garbage, my problems. When I go to work, nobody knows that I got beat up by my wife or my kids, yelled at me. And the same thing happens when I leave the office. I have a garbage bin in which I drop my problems, and my wife never knows my paper was rejected, my grant was turned down. I come home because they would like to see me who I am, but not what my job has turned me into.
Jazakallah, Dr. A very comprehensive answer. I actually have a couple of points that I wanted to add. One is, something that's when you get into something new, when you start doing it, you're all excited about it. Within some time relevant to the job, you'll find it becoming mundane, and you're comparing that to the excitement of starting a new job, and then finding that lull or that slow down. That would always happen, because excitement of starting something new really pushes you to get into it and get things done, and it makes you understand the job and start performing well. But then a time comes where you say, the job, it becomes a daily mundane routine. But if, as Dr. Saab said, if you keep doing it well, keep giving it all, then people around you will see you. The second thing that relates to it, I've seen so many immigrants coming in, joining it, like as myself, as a CSR, taking calls, call after call after call, return customers, and then progressing into different departments that they originally had worked for in Pakistan, or have come here and studied for, and got in those companies and progressed, and then from there their careers took off. So as seconding what Dr. Saab said, that's my two cents of advice, but we'll go from there. Any questions from you, Farwa? Or
I actually do have a question, but before I jump into that, I just wanted to kind of backtrack and just kind of like, share my thoughts on what you said about, halal ki kamai, and how it honestly just goes back to what your intentions are when you're working, and how every little bit of like your thoughts kind of contribute to you bringing home a halal income. And that was a very fresh perspective that I've never honestly heard before. So I want to like thank you for that, because that really did open my eyes to like a whole new way of looking at it. So aside from that, my question for you was kind of more on the topic of just kind of growing in a specific role, or just kind of giving all that you have to a specific role, and not kind of thinking about what's next, or like what's the next step that I have to take within the same organization. How do you kind of go about having like difficult conversations in regards to pay, or like, just workplace environments and XYZ? Like, how do you kind of navigate those conversations that you want to have with a person in a leadership role?
That's really a great question. And I think it's a question that an executive would ask. So may Allah bless you for the level of your thinking. And that really made me fresh now. I'm all reconditioned. When I became the department head, the first thing I noted was that when I looked at the salary scale, the women in my department was making 10,000 less than men, right? And they were just as good. The ranking was, associate professor, full professor, but their salary was $10,000 less than men. And the first thing I did, my dean said, okay, you've never asked for anything. What can I do for you to take this job? And I said to him, I would like you to remove these inequities and make sure you bring these women folks to the same level. And then I asked him the same question. How come they were appointed at that level? And he said, you know what? Women tend to be more content than men. And they're happy whatever is offered to them. $45,000? Oh my God, I can buy Gucci bag. I can buy new shoes, Levi's, this, and this. Imagine that all I could do. And they're very content. Men, on the other hand, are much more competitive in that. They would have really done the homework to see that the person who was hired in a different university, same level, same standard of living cost is same, is actually making that much money, right? So what they do is they negotiate. So I tell you here, because Alberta was the barren land here, nobody will come. I think only dinosaurs came here to die. So, for us to be able to attract people, we had to raise the salaries. And that's what really attracted a lot of people, because a professor here at Calgary actually makes 20, 30,000 more than a professor in Ontario, right? So salaries are real. Doctors, they make a killing, and even for them to stay here, they were given every year $10,000 allowance called Alberta Retention Allowance. Our medical students, when they graduated, we will write off their student loan. Boom. If you stayed here for 5 years, you don't have to pay loan. So men actually tend to negotiate much more harder, where women tend to be a lot more, content. So I give you another example. I knew that the university had 0 merit increment for the next 2 years because of the economical financial exigency, right? There will be no new professor will be getting, or nobody will be getting any merit increments, or salary increases for the next 2 years, so 0. So when I hired this young lady, I raised her salary up to the level where she should have been. And then I said to her, look, you don't know this, but I know that there will be no salary in the next 2 years. There'll be 0 increment. That means that you will actually miss out in these $5,000 per year increments that you will miss out on. So I'm going to actually give those increments to you now. So I bump up your salary at that level so you are not impacted. So, you treat others the way you would have liked yourself treated. This is what our imams have also taught us. This is really the way that we should treat, people in that level. So I think the important thing is to, once again, do your homework. Look what the salaries are. Talk to other female members the department or the unit that you're working with. Ask them that, where did you start? And then negotiate. Look, the inflation has gone up 10%. Yes, the salary in the advertised, was at that level, but I think you should really compensate me for that 10% loss. And then, negotiate. And then, people become, one way to really look at it is in any organization. And since you guys have raised the bar with your very insightful and thought-provoking high-level questions, I'm going to take you to the high level. This is where we want to see you in 2050. So the program is actually 2050. Any structure of any organization is based on certain skeletons, right? Skeleton is based on certain bones. Some of them are actually wish bones. They wish the work was done by somebody else. Some of them are jawbones, like me, they just do the talking, right? They go and talk here, talk there, the jawbones. Some of them are actually, knuckle bones. They create problems in an organization. They are pain, the pinching point that come and they will create problems for you, or they're negative and they're always not there to help you. There are very few that are the backbones. And these are the people that actually carry the organization. So no matter which job you have, become a vertebrae in that backbone. And then slowly and gradually you get access to the brain, because this is where the spinal cord is connected to. I had to bring brain in, right? And then what you do is when you're sitting at the brain level, you take over the organization. You know how the organization really works. So I think those are really important thing is that, don't settle. Women tend to really not negotiate. That's the reason that the salaries still are not at the level where men should be. Things are changing, things are getting really better, but you need to really negotiate really hard. You need to know your self-worth. And that self-worth must come out of your interview. That's why, Jamil Bhai was saying that these are important skill sets. These are really life skills that you need to learn to be able to sell yourself. It's all about salesmanship, right? How best you can sell yourself. And often when you're on a job, don't throw your resume or, resignation, but you could really say to a senior mentor, as Sukaina had asked, or you had asked earlier, that you should go and approach someone, a senior connected member in the unit. You go and, you could say that I've considered you as a mentor, buy you a cup of coffee, I need your advice. I've gotten this job offer. What do you think of this job offer? Now what happens, and it happened to me too, that my colleague who was the institute director, he went straight after talking to me to the dean and he said, you know what, Naweed is thinking of leaving. He's gotten this offer in St. John's, and then he will be one of the crab hanging in there in the dark and in the shadow in the misty weather. The dean immediately called me, says, well, can we have coffee? And he said, I'm going to raise your salary by $25,000. How does that sound? I didn't have to ask. So, when you have these people that are your left and right arms, they are the ones that can speak on your behalf, the job actually gets done. So all of a sudden you have another offer in your hand. You could negotiate with the other company. Look, my university is already offering me this. My company has already offered me this. If you're offering the same amount, there is no incentive for me to move on to. You need to really raise the bar here. And this is how you really negotiate. Be tough, be tough, because, if you have made yourself irreplaceable, you are irreplaceable.
I think that is the key, Dr. Saab, is first you have to create that understanding in your company, in your organization, in your seniors or your leaders of your worth. Once you've done that, then comes the next step. So Farwa's question is, when do you do that? Is when people know your worth that much, and that can only be by proving your worth, doing things as Dr. Saab said, do the 110% of your abilities, pushing in more, learning more, developing your skill sets, applying those in your work, and going out of your boundaries. One of the questions on my performance appraisal is, did this guy went above and beyond of expectations from him?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. That's
you know,
really, really good. That's good.
Yeah.
Good segue. And
Yep.
the shortest reference letter that I have ever written, or the strongest reference letter that I have written from one of my students, was that ever since she joined my laboratory, I never had to turn the lights on or off.
Mhm.
I put the dot and I signed and sent the letter. And immediately the other person really called. He says, this is the strongest letter and endorsement that I have ever seen said for anyone. Hard work, good work ethics, dedication. You're there, you are always there 100% of the time, and you gave 100% that you had. I think that's really is the key to success.
Good discussion, guys. So initially, our topic for today would have been job search. What we have done is basically combined this one and the next one, which is fine with us as long as you guys are asking questions and your questions are being answered. The structure of the program is not important as answering your questions. So we're fine with this line of discussion, but I did had one thing in mind, which I had mentioned to Dr. Saab earlier. We were talking about job search. So we've talked about what do I do? We've talked about networking and so on and so forth. And in that discussion, Dr. Saab mentioned job interviews, which is a very key factor. So you've sold yourself, you've understood the company, and they've asked you for an interview. You go in. What do you do, Dr. Saab? Like, how do you prepare yourself for it? I know there are tons of websites out there that have questions and questions, but in setting up one's mindset of how to approach it, what would that be? What would your advice be?
I think it's a really great question. So I'm going to really turn now the table both around Farwa and Sukaina, right? So because we need to make it more interactive rather than me just, yapping away. Okay, so Farwa, we just hired you as the executive team at the HR or, in a very high level administrative position. You were hired and then you were appointed to hire someone else for a particular job, right? All of a sudden you're sitting there, the person who looked really phenomenal on their resume walks in, right? Shortlisted candidate, top candidate, you invited them for an interview. This person is obese, large, right? Not well dressed up, huffing and puffing, really having hard time problems, even sitting and sweating. What would your impression be? What would you actually do in that case? Would you hire this person? Would you not hire this person? What kind of feedback are you going to give? Looked really phenomenally good in resume.
That's a very tricky question. Honestly, I think at that point, it just, I think it's putting your own biases and, like your expectations aside, and seeing what they bring to the table at the end of the day, right? Because all their qualifications and all that, there is some truth to it according to the resume. So if I was in that position, where I was interviewing somebody and, they didn't match the expectation that I had set myself, I would just kind of put that aside and just kind of get to know them as a person. The reason I keep on kind of, reiterating the expectation part is because we oftentimes, like set this like mental image of a person and we're like, oh, if like this person has to meet this, and like they probably look like this or they probably look like that, right? But that's all based off of your own experiences. So I think putting that aside is just, one way to kind of get to know the person better, and go from there. And then, just kind of speaking on like the whole interviewing aspect of a job, I think just kind of having that personable touch to how you communicate, and, just really connecting with your interviewee or interviewer, really, gets you that extra mile. But that's kind of how I would approach the situation. So again, how about you?
Yeah, so, the important thing is that you need to be sitting on the other side to prepare yourself for this side. So these counter narratives are really important. What will go through your mind? This person, has no self-esteem. This person is really, got really maybe lazy, maybe this, maybe that. All those kinds of things go through your head. This is the unconscious bias, and these biases are the ones that you need to really negate from any issue. We all are biased. I mean, we brown people are actually more prejudiced and biased than the other people, and we don't realize, we don't admit it either. So, and many a times it really depends who is interviewing you. But you need to really make sure that, you don't fall victim to those unconscious biases, and that's, preparing for the battle is almost 80% of the battle is won when you are prepared. When you are prepared in anticipation, I can ask Sukaina as well, just imagine that you're living in an apartment and you have access to the gym, the exercise, and there's a pin that everybody is given, but this young lady who doesn't have money or access to that facility, she asks you for your pin so that she could use the exercise facility. What would you do?
I think it depends a bit on the variables of the situation. Like if it's someone who's not from there, and if it's like against building code for any resident to use it, I think that's a tricky situation. But if it's a gym open for anyone and that person just
it's not. You are the one who's got the key because you paid for it, and this person is actually asking you to give the PIN code so that they could use it without having to pay for it.
Yeah, like I think my issue doesn't lie with them not being able to pay for it. I would happily pay for them. I think my only issue in that situation would then be like breaking the rules in order to let that person go in.
Great question. You've been raised really, really good. So the important thing to remember is that if you said in an interview, no, I will not give, that's not a correct answer. If you said yes, that's not a correct answer. So the answer during interview is something in between, because what you want to do is exactly what you said. I would want her to do exercise because if she's healthy, we have contributing to a healthy society. So I will either ask number of neighbors if they're willing to chip in so we could pay for her membership, so we raise the tide so all boats can come up, right? So those are the narratives that are really important during the interviewing skill, that you really have to be prepared, because they can throw something completely out. And they will say, well, why should we really hire you? So for interview, most of the time, it is really what it is that you bring to the table, what it is that you can actually contribute to the company. You know about yourself, everything, right? But now you need to see that whether you know the company really well, inside out, and where it is that your skill set that you have described in your resume really fit and have a really good fit with the company and organization, where you become a value add rather than another body to warm, the seats. But even I think in situations, if you do get jobs, sharpen your saw every time, raise the bar. And once you have crossed that bar or reached that bar, raise it yet again. So this gives you a forward motion, constant growth in your career and in your profession as well. So I think, for interview skills, most important thing is to get to know the company. get to know people who are interviewing you, right? And once they interview, they introduce themselves, you need to really make an eye contact. Make sure that you really take a moment to think on your feet. How are you going to articulate? Many a times we have seen our own brown people, is even Chinese. They think that if I take slightly 1 or 2 seconds, the other person will think I'm dumb, right? So I don't know the answer. And if you don't know the answer, say that you don't know the answer, but you will look into this for sure. So be honest, right? Make sure that your integrity comes, your pride, your honor, your dignity, and your preparedness actually show during the interview. So I think, in preparing for interview, you will find all of these things, do this, but be yourself. Don't try to emulate. Don't try to copy what Mr. John said, in one of their interviews. Be yourself, because you are a unique person, and that unique aspect has to come through really the interview for you to distinguish yourself and differentiate yourself from other candidates. Many of the time we see during medical, students admissions as well, the same answer gets given because they prepare together. It's the same raw kind of thing back and forth. And I listen to it and the answer is correct. Yes, fine. But, it doesn't get me excited. When I interview someone who is unique, very different, their different perspective, well thought out, well articulated, they thought about their answers, I know that they took the question seriously, are the ones that I'm going to really hire. And going back to Farwa, you actually are not considering what the person really looks like, black or white, it doesn't matter. It's what they bring to the table, right? Their skill sets, if they are good and they are really going to add value and they are wonderful people, that's what really is important. And I think, those biases often we need to tackle, we have to really prepare for as well. But at the same time, make sure that you are who you are.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. Definitely some great points. We'll probably spend another episode on discussing these two topics, that is job search and growth in your job once you have acquired the job. I just wanted to share this. My thought is my experience. One of my experiences, I was hiring for a position, and I had a few finalists, 2 or 3, and one of them was a very recent immigrant from China, if I'm not wrong, remembering incorrectly, and there was a definite issue of language barrier, and so we decided, my team and I, we decided that would not be an issue. But with that, I had to decide, okay, that should not be an issue for me hiring him. But then once I hire him, I should be able to, again, not consider that as an issue. I'll have to work hard with him so that everything is done in the right way. But, you need to be prepared with it. So I guess my point is, if you're presenting yourself, whatever you're presenting, don't oversell yourself. Don't say something that you cannot do, because once you get in there, you'll have to do it. As Dr. Saab, being truthful is a very important aspect. However, we're going to spend more time in the next episode. I hope Farwa and Sukaina, you have gained some information from this, and we have, we will try and answer many more questions that we get. With that, I would want to end today's program on the point that at the bottom of the screen, you will see a WhatsApp number, and that you can send your questions in, or if you want to participate in the program. These programs are recorded on Zoom, so anyone from any part of the world can participate. Please message us and we will include you. Having said that, thank you all for being here with us today. May God bless you. We'll see you next time. Thank you, and Khuda Hafiz.